When Hanifa Farsafi signed up to help coordinate the tax protests, she had no idea things would move this fast. The 28-year-old is one of thousands who've taken to the streets to demonstrate against a finance bill which they say will cripple Kenyans already struggling with a high cost of living. Farsafi has been arrested and marked as a person of interest by police.
There's no one leading this. Everyone is coming out, because we are tired. People are tired, people are hungry, people are unemployed, and you keep pushing the punitive taxes, to us. So no one is sponsoring this. I'm saying this. No one is sponsoring this. Okay, you cannot sponsor this much anger. The anger is organic.
The government wants to raise revenue to run a budget of $30 billion between 2024 and 2025. Some of the controversial tax proposals have been dropped from the bill, but the protesters say that is not enough. Manufacturers, retailers and investors have joined the condemnation. They accuse government officials of wasting public funds and corruption.
Kenya does not have a revenue problem. Kenya has an expenditure problem. When you grow tax beyond the economic growth rate, Kenya's economic growth is about 5%. They want to grow the revenue by 13% of the nominal GDP. That cannot happen.
Police have allowed the protesters to hold the demonstration on Tuesday. The organizers say they want to shut the country down.
They've been trying to occupy Parliament and have organized what they call a week of rage. These are young people who say they have had enough, and a lot of Kenyans support these demonstrations.
The protests have been largely peaceful, but human rights groups have accused security forces of using excessive force to disperse people. 2 protesters were killed last week. Rex Kanyike's mother says her son bled to death when he was shot on the thigh.
I don't even know what to say to the government. They're fighting for their rights. Why use live bullets? It would have been easier to understand if he had had a weapon. He was just walking with his friend.
She hopes no one else will have to bury a child while fighting for their rights. Catherine Soy, Aljazeera, Nairobi.
Reginald Kazutu is an associate lecturer and economist at Oxford Brookes University. He joins us live from Oxford in the United Kingdom. Thanks for your time. This finance bill has really mobilised young people in particular to come out and protest about what is it about the measures that have struck so close to home?
I think if you look at the economic structure of Kenya currently, especially in terms of wealth distribution, where you have more than less than 0.1% of the population earning most of the wealth, and the top 10% earners in the country earn 23 times more than in the bottom 10. So you'll find when this finance bill came in, instead of going for the wealthy, where all the funding and all the wealth sits, it started touching on basic commodities through indirect taxes, changing the VAT schedule, so targeting consumption. And now when you start targeting basic things like bread and oil, you are now trying to make involuntary savings on people who do not even have an income. So that is what has sparked the insensitivity of the government of not growing incomes, but trying to squeeze a cow that has already bled out all its milk for the country.
I mean, part of the anger also seems to stem from the fact that many young people feel their tax revenue is ending up lining up the pockets of corrupt officials. I mean, how much truth is there to that?
Corruption in Kenya is endemic and it is budgeted. So in the fiscal policy, there are 2 sides. We have the finance bill and we have the appropriation bill. The appropriation bill is what tells us where the money is going to go. So the problem that we normally have with the appropriation bill is that projects are, 1, either irrelevant or 2, inflated, so that the big guys can get their cuts and their kickbacks. So it is true that there is a lot of corruption, but right now most of the revenue, so for this financial year, the Kenya government has to pay 1.8 trillion shillings in debt service, either redemption or interest payment, versus a revenue, ordinary revenue, about 2.4, 2.5 trillion. So majority of this tax is actually going to pay debt for the next couple of years, 4 or 5. So they will not feel the impact of the taxes because it's literally just going to pay debt.
I guess some people will be wondering, because Kenya is known traditionally, or seen at least, as one of Africa's most successful economies. So how did the government end up so cash-strapped like this?
When the problem is when African leaders focus on this indicator called GDP at the expense of creating jobs, at the expense of income. When they apply Western-led economic models instead of models that actually generate income. So the Kenya government for the last 10, 12 or so years has been having a fiscal expansion-led GDP growth where the government is the largest player in the economy. So the economy has been growing through big infrastructure projects, roads, railways and all, which have not translated into job creation. And if it does not translate to job creation, that means income or aggregate income does not grow. So then you start surviving on a debt bench. Revenue does not increase, debt increases because you go borrow from China, you go borrow from IMF, you build a road, but it doesn't translate into aggregate income growth. Then means your tax revenue remains lower vis-a-vis your national income. So yes, it has been a stellar performance for Kenya and economic-wise, but the structure and the stability of that economic growth and the quality of that economic growth did not translate into moving people from poverty into the middle income and growing incomes.
And Reginald, I just want to make reference for our viewers to the live pictures we are seeing. This is the capital, Nairobi. It's about 20 to 8 in the morning, local time, and you can already see the huge police presence there, smoke rising. We're expecting a day of protests. What do you think? How do you see this panning out? Because we've had this week of rage from protesters, and then you have the government trying to placate them. And then you've got the vote in Parliament today. How do you see this playing out?
And unfortunately, Parliament has been the weakest link in Kenya's democracy because they are in the pocket of the executive. They're just voting machines for the executive. If Parliament can actually stand for the people and the constituents that they represent, and say no to some of the excesses of the executive, it might pan out differently. But we know from the second round of voting, 205 MPs voted yes. We don't expect any of them to change their vote in this committee sitting where they vote on item. Maybe 1 or 2 items might be dropped. Then there will be a final vote when now the final amended draft comes back to Parliament as an amended document, and they'll be given another opportunity to vote. The problem with the protest that they're having right now is you have heard that it's pretty much leaderless to an extent. And unlike previous protests where they would call Raila Odinga or Kalonzo Musyoka and say, okay, please get your people out of the street, speak to your people, they have no one to speak to. And these youths that are protesting are largely peaceful. So most of the violence you are seeing, the tear gas, the water cannons, in my opinion, are unwarranted because you can allow people to actually picket. They are not destroying anything. They are singing, they are voicing their concerns. Allow them to do that. But then when you provoke them, when you start using live ammunition, colored water cannons and all, these are young people. If they then go out of control, they can literally outnumber the police forces that are in the CBD. And it's nationwide now. So the resources sooner or later will be stretched. If they sustain this every day, they might actually be able to shut down the country. And the cost to GDP, the revenue being lost with the central business district shut down, businesses not going up, the investor confidence that is being lost on the government, who people thought the government was a progressive government, are slowly changing their mind about the presidency of William Ruto, and the ability of his economic advisors also has a big impact on future foreign direct investment and businesses that might have been thinking of coming to set base in Kenya.
Reginald, I really appreciate your analysis. We'll keep an eye on the situation in Kenya as it unfolds. As I say, a big day of protests expected today. Reginald Kazutu, Associate Lecturer and Economist at Oxford Brookes University, speaking to us there from Oxford.
Make sure to subscribe to our channel to get the latest news from Al Jazeera.